Okay, everyone. Bonjour, Kinagoya. Hello, everyone. My name is James Miller. I am the Indigenous Enrollment Advisor for First Peoples House of Learning. So welcome to our presentation as part of the Trent University's virtual winter open house. I'm going to open up a slideshow and I will go through a quick slide deck and outline some of the services that we provide at First Peoples House, explaining who we are and our different departments, as well as the different Indigenous spaces that we offer on campus and some workshops and events that take place throughout the year that First Peoples House presents. Just give me a moment here and I will bring up my PowerPoint. Alrighty, so what is First Peoples House of Learning? So First Peoples House of Learning is honored to offer cultural services to a diverse community of Indigenous learners, First Nations status and non-status, Métis and Inuit students at Trent University. We collaborate with students to support their academic success, personal development, and leadership potential. At FPHL, we strive to embody the Indigenous worldview of education as a ceremony of learning. We nurture our community that recognizes the voices and spirits of our students. And so who we are is Indigenous Student Support Services. So if you are an Indigenous student attending Trent University, we encourage you to access our services. I will explain how to make sure that we know you are an Indigenous student at Trent University following the presentation. There's a quick self-identification survey, which I will pop a link into the chat for, again, following the slideshow. So the services that we provide are academic supports, financial supports, peer mentorship, and cultural supports. So we have different departments and services at First Peoples House of Learning. One department, which is the department that I'm responsible for, is Indigenous Recruitment, Enrollment, and Admissions. So if you're an Indigenous person trying to figure out everything from post-secondary opportunities, I will come and do presentations at different high schools explaining the Indigenous opportunities at Trent University. If you are considering applying to Trent University, you're welcome to contact me. My email will again be in the chat following the presentation. And I can assist you with everything from which programs might interest you for enrollments, how to apply for those programs, and then during the enrollment process and the application process, how to navigate that process. So how to get your transcripts over to Trent University, different forms that may be important for you to fill out as an Indigenous student at Trent, such as the self-declaration form that I mentioned. We also have a student success department, which consists of a student success coordinator, as well as our access and mentorship coordinator. And then we have cultural support. So cultural supports include everything from our mental health counseling to the different events that we put on to our Indigenous spaces on campus. And I'm going to go more into depth about all these services as the slideshow continues. We serve both our Peterborough campus as well as our Durham GTA campus down in Oshawa. Additional services outside of student supports that we offer are cultural consultations, as well as workshops and events to the community. So, as I mentioned, Indigenous Recruitment, Enrollment, and Admissions provides outreach to schools, communities, and social service agencies. We support Indigenous students throughout the admissions and enrollment process, from application through to course registration. And we also do that in a culturally sensitive way. So if you are an urban Indigenous person who grew up in Toronto, Ontario, your experience is going to be very different from someone coming from a fly-in community. So our Indigenous recruitment, enrollment, and admissions process is tailored and designed to be mindful of the multitude of Indigenous experiences that we may be coming from. Our Student Success Department provides academic support such as tutoring and student accessibility. So student accessibility would refer to if you're coming in from high school and you have what's called an IEP, which is like just an alternate learning program. So we provide services and connection to services through Trent's Student Accessibility Services Department. Our tutoring is free of charge. So if you are an Indigenous student at Trent and you need to access tutoring for any department, whether that's everything from physics to Indigenous languages, we can connect you with tutors to provide you that additional academic support. Financial supports that our Student Success Department is responsible for include grants, bursaries, scholarships, and awards. So grants and bursaries, along with scholarships and awards, are all monies that you do not need to repay. So for example, if you're an Indigenous student and perhaps your band funding only covers, let's say, half to 2/3 of your tuition, or maybe you need some additional supports to pay for your residence, right? If you're coming into school for residence. Our Student Success Coordinator can connect you with different grants and bursaries that are available to Indigenous people to provide you with those additional supports to cover any of those gaps in your funding. Once you are a student at Trent, if you maintain an over 80% average, you do get all of those progressive tuition awards. So 80%, I believe, is $500 off tuition each term, scaling all the way up when you get 95% and above to a full scholarship. But outside of that, let's say you're taking Anishinaabe or you're taking our Mohawk language course, and you excel in your Mohawk language or in your Anishinaabe course, there's an Anishinaabe and Mohawk Indigenous Language Award, for example. So there's a number of awards at Trent University that are specific to Indigenous students. So our Student Success Coordinator can help you make sure that you're eligible for those and that your name is put forward and nominated for those awards. In addition to those kind of in-house Trent-specific financial awards, there's also a number of agencies like Inspire, as well as some programs from the government of Ontario, the government of Canada, as well as private organizations like Ontario Power Generation that provide scholarships to Indigenous students in different fields. So whether that's, again, let's say hypothetically you're in the chemical engineering program or you're in the business program, right? There's different awards both at Trent and then also outside of Trent that you can apply for. Our Student Success Coordinator can help you navigate that process and refer you to different awards that you might be eligible for. Other ones that we find are helpful for Indigenous students are awards and supports that relate to, for example, Indigenous single parents who are coming to school. But there's really a multitude. If you're the first person in your family as well who's gone to post-secondary education, so the first one, like your parents or grandparents have not attended university, you're the first one coming to university, there's a number of funding supports available for you there. We also provide, outside of those financial supports, if you are an Indigenous student who is not looking to live on campus, but you want to be connected with some off-campus housing services, we have connections and relationships to Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services. So we can provide you with those housing supports if you're looking to live off campus as well. If you're living on campus, of course, we will gladly provide you with all those resources and help you in navigating the application process for residence housing too. So we also have a peer mentorship program, which is part of our student success supports. So peer mentorship means that if you're an Indigenous student just coming into Trent University, you want to sign up for our peer mentorship program, you go ahead, you sign up and you get paired up with an upper year Indigenous student. So for myself, I came in, even as a mature student, I came in at the age of 32 and I was paired up with a PhD student who was in his early 40s. So even for those of you, if you're mature students coming in later on in life, we can pair you up with an upper year student who will be within your age range too. So it's not just for 17-year-olds coming in right out of high school. What your peer mentor will help you with is just answering some of your different questions about what it's like to be an Indigenous person at Trent University. So providing some insights into student life. They can provide you feedback and insights into different courses too, right? So let's say, you're in your first year Indigenous Studies course and you're like, hey, I'm struggling with this particular assignment. Your mentor might be able to give you some tips and tricks on completing different assignments, how to navigate certain courses as well, right? So it provides you with that kind of additional support. They also might give you insights into how to navigate certain aspects of student services on campus. Like, they might explain to you what the process was for them to go through a given process, whether it was registering for a club, how to navigate things at the fitness center, different aspects of student life. So currently, in this past year during the COVID pandemic, our peer mentorship has had meetings on our Discord channel. We are moving that back in person. So if each of you in attendance today are coming in fall 2022, all of that stuff will be moved back to in person. So those in-person meetings take place in the form of lunch and learns. So again, our student success department has different budgeting, study skills, time management, and stress management sessions. I totally encourage all of you to attend them. One of the things we like to do at FPHL is we love to feed our students. So all of our lunch and learns, we have different traditional Indigenous foods there. So we'll have like Indian tacos, we'll have venison stew, we'll have Three Sisters stew, which is corned beans and squash, right? Traditional Haudenosaunee food. And then sometimes we'll do things more casually like pizza and things like that. But there's always lots and lots of food. So if you're a first year student and you're tired of living on craft dinner and hot dogs or whatever you're eating in your dorm room, please come down to our lunch and learns. Another benefit of our mentorship program is that we have weekly study sessions. So we have a beautiful space at Trent University called the Gathering Space, a nice big open room. And we reserve that one evening a week for all of our Indigenous students, and they're welcome to drop in and take some time and do some studying there. We have lots of snacks available at that time, along with office supplies and different things that you might find handy for the studying process. Okay, cultural supports. So our cultural department spans everything from mental health supports to different cultural initiatives on campus. So at First People's House, we have two mental health counselors. They're both Indigenous in background. One of them is Cherokee. She carries some Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee teachings as well. Our other counselor is Menominee and Oneida. He also carries a mix of Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee teachings. And they're both trained in Indigenous social work. So that means a pairing of traditional Indigenous knowledge along with Western social work. And they can provide you with supports if your learning journey gets too stressful at any particular point. In the past, in my learning journey, I accessed the cultural counselors, and I found them to be a really good help in de-escalating some stress that I was experiencing at that time in my life. So similar to our lunch and learns, our cultural department also puts forward different cultural programming and workshops. So they're kind of like the lunch and learns. So we'll use beading as an example. So for beading, we'll have like an evening beading session. You can show up to, it's usually held in a gathering space as well. You can show up, you have dinner, you learn how to bead. Even if you're a totally novice beader, you've never picked up a needle and thread before, we'll guide you through that process. Other cultural workshops that we've had have been hide tanning. So if you want to explore connections to some traditional knowledge, learn how to tan a hide. We've had hide tanning workshops in the past. Other ones include ribbon skirt and ribbon shirt making. So lots of different options for traditional knowledge. If you're looking to reconnect to culture, if you grew up separated from culture, we make sure that we facilitate as much of that as possible. We also welcome student ideas, right? So if you're a student that you feel like, you know, there's some cultural gaps that you want shared, right? We always encourage people to approach us so we can provide some of those services as well. So we've had some Inuit students, for example, who've approached us with different ideas for Inuit specific workshops, which have been really lovely, and we've been able to put those on to support our Inuit students on campus. Now, throughout the year, we also coordinate visiting elders and traditional peoples, and they're called elders and traditional knowledge holders in residence. So what that means is they come and visit campus for a week or two. They'll come and lecture at different courses, typically Indigenous studies or Indigenous environmental studies and sciences courses. And throughout that time, they also spend time in our Indigenous spaces on campus. So something I'll touch on as well is we have a firekeeping program. And so that's a volunteer program that we offer at First People's House. So students sign up and they take care of our traditional area. I'll get more into depth with that at a later slide in the presentation. But as part of that, the elders and traditional peoples generally go and spend time at our fire. The fire takes place in the teepee. That's my digital background today, the teepee at Trent University. So it can be a really good opportunity if you're a firekeeper and you want to volunteer to do that, to connect with those visiting elders. So I know for me, when I was an undergrad, I was a volunteer firekeeper, and I connected with those visiting elders, learned a lot about both my culture, so I'm Anishinaabe, as well as a lot of other cultures. There was a really wonderful visiting elder who came all the way from Hawaii. We've had Maori elders in the past, so lots of different Indigenous people from all around the world, not just from here on Turtle Island. Annually in February as well, we facilitate and organize and coordinate an Elders and Traditional Peoples gathering. So that's a 3-day gathering that takes place at Trent University. We also offer it in a hybrid model, so people can log in online from far away. We gather a whole bunch of elders, they come to campus and they do different workshops, right? So in the past, we've had everything from cultural Métis workshops on finger weaving and things like that, traditional Anishinaabe water knowledge, Inuit teachings about the killik, which is the traditional seal oil lamp, as well as just general panels on Indigenous women's leadership, how Indigenous people have historically navigated pandemics, some of our traditional knowledge that comes into play with regards to that. So that was a theme that we had, this past year when we were navigating the COVID pandemic. And aside from the Indigenous Elders and Traditional Peoples gathering, we focus on promoting cultural initiatives on campus. So currently one of our initiatives that we're engaged in is we are having all the signs made bilingual to reflect the Anishinaabemowin Michi-Sagig dialect, which is the local dialect of the Michi-Sagig First Nations, having every single sign on campus be bilingual in Michi-Sagig, Anishinaabemowin, and English. And we're always looking at doing different cultural trainings and workshops with faculty members and other student groups on campus, just to make the Indigenous experience on campus that much better for our community. So as I related, we have a traditional area. So in Peterborough, our traditional area is called Minidoog Akiing, which means the spirit lands, translated from Anishinaabe. It is comprised of a teepee, medicine garden, wigwam, sweat lodge, and ceremonial area. So some of the cultural supports that take place in the traditional area, I mentioned the firekeeping program. So we have social fires every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that also includes at Endying in the Durham campus. The social fires go on at the same time. The Durham campus area has a teepee and a ceremonial area. It's gradually being expanded. We are going to have a medicine garden there and some of the other facilities. They aren't quite in place yet. It's a little newer of a campus, so we're still working on expanding that area. So focusing back on Peterborough, those social fires that take place from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., both Tuesdays and Thursdays. As I mentioned, some of the visiting elders will pop in, so it's a great time to connect with them. You can volunteer to be a firekeeper to help take care of Minnedowaga-Keeing. So our volunteer firekeepers are responsible for facilitating those social fires. And really, you can contribute as much or as little as your time allows. So if your schedule is very busy, you don't feel like you need to be there for the whole 6 hours. I was a volunteer firekeeper. Some days I would make it for 15 minutes. Other days I would be able to stay for 2 or 3 hours. We have 2 paid positions as well, which are student jobs. So you can apply for those each year of head firekeeper. And then the medicine garden, we grow all sorts of traditional medicines there. So everything like the 4 sacred medicines, so tobacco, sage, cedar, and sweetgrass. We also grow 3 sisters, so that's corn, beans, and squash, heirloom vegetables. We also grow a number of other medicinal plants, such as nimipin, which is known as wild ginger root. We have blueberries, strawberries, all sorts of things. So if you come here in the fall, you'll kind of get the tail end of the medicine garden. You'll see everything coming into harvest. And then when you come to campus in the fall as well, you get a welcome kit, including a smudge kit. And all the medicines in the smudge kit are things that we've grown and harvested in our medicine garden. So our wigwam is what's pictured there. Our wigwam we sometimes use as a classroom. So there's different classes that will take place in there. Sometimes it's also used as a gathering space. This photo was taken without a fire in there, so it doesn't look quite as welcoming as it normally looks. Normally there's a nice big warm fire in there, which is quite welcoming. Our teepee is quite large, so we have room for up to 20 people normally without COVID restrictions, which should be off by the fall. So it's a great place for those social fires. When you gather there, lots of people can fit there. They're also a really great place, those social fires, to get feedback from other students. So if you're an undergraduate student, you're looking again for tips on navigating certain courses, you want to connect with other Indigenous people on campus, it's a great way to build that social network and improve your student life on campus. The sweat lodge. So the sweat lodge, we offer men's sweats, women's sweats, and Two-Spirit sweats monthly. They've been on pause due to COVID, but again, in the fall, they should be back up and running. In addition to those supports, we have a men's talking circle. We offer a full moon ceremony for women and Two-Spirit folks. And we also have a Two-Spirit talking circle as well. So we got lots of different supports based on the wide spectrum of gender identities that exist within Indigenous cultures. And I would encourage you to access those supports. And I'll explain how you can access those supports later on in the slide. So again, that kind of covers all of our cultural supports as far as they relate to the traditional area. Some general contact information for each of you, and I will be popping this into the chat. So that photo is the big, we call it the cheese building, but it's known as Enwying or Peter Zosky College. Our office is on the 3rd floor of this building. And if you look at this this picture here, just kind of in the center here, that's the outside of the gathering space. And if we were to look to the right of this picture, that would be, there'd be a parking lot and then our traditional area. So it's very close. If you are an Indigenous student trying to figure out which residences you want to apply to on campus, I would totally recommend you apply to the Peter Zosky College residences, because you're going to be close to First People's House offices. You're going to be close to the traditional area, and also a lot of Indigenous studies and Indigenous environmental studies courses, as well as our Indigenous BEd program. So there's a lot of huge advantages if you are looking to live in residence to apply to Peter Zosky College residences. So a couple of general things. Again, I'll pop the links into the chat. Our general inquiries, you can email fphl@trentu.ca for enrollment. So that's me. If you need help applying, enrolling, or advice on registering for courses, you can email me at fphlenrollment@trentu.ca. For student success, so that's financial, housing, mentorship, and other supports, you can email fphlstudentsuccess@trentu.ca. For cultural supports, you email fphlculturalcounselor@trentu.ca. Our access and mentorship coordinator, a really lovely woman. She was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately she got really busy. Her name is Rachel Nichols. So you can also email her, Rachel M. Nichols @trentu.ca. Our website is down there, so trentu.ca/fphl. I'll pop that in the chat for you so you can take a look there. And we have lots of social media accounts. So we got Instagram. We have an Instagram for FPHL Trent. We have an Instagram for FPHL Durham. And we also have a Facebook page. I will also be popping into the chat a link to our Indigenous self-identification survey. And that's a way for you, when you apply to Trent, when you are enrolled at Trent, to make sure that you are in touch with us for our mailing lists, and also to make sure that you're eligible for the different Indigenous specific supports, including financial and other supports that we have available. I apologize, my phone is going off. I should have turned that on silent. That's a rookie mistake. Alrighty, so at this point, I am going to stop my slideshow and I will open up the floor to any questions that you may have. And again, I'll begin populating those links into the chat for you. So for questions, you're welcome to either put your hand up, you're welcome to unmute, whatever's easiest for you. Alrighty, so Andrew is asked, that's great that there are knowledge workshops. Are any or all of them open to non-Indigenous students? And are there any on or off-campus opportunities for learning traditional land-based skills? So those are great questions, Andrew. So to answer your question, so we have certain workshops that are Indigenous specific, right? And certainly in times of COVID, when we have limited capacity, we do prioritize Indigenous attendance, but we also encourage non-Indigenous students to join us for a number of those workshops too. So we have workshops, and certainly in the fall, when things are open up more and we don't have those capacity issues, we're going to have a lot more space, and there's definitely opportunities for non-Indigenous students to come to certain teachings that are open to the community. Our social fires that take place every Tuesday and Thursday, they're open to the whole community. So we encourage non-Indigenous people to come out and experience that traditional area at Minnedowa-Gakiing or down in Durham at Endaying. And you're more than welcome to participate in those. Yeah, and as far as land-based or traditional learning opportunities, so those are more course related, right? So some of the courses that offer land-based learning, there's a course that's involved in the Indigenous Bachelor of Education program that involves land-based learning, experiential learning, and how to design courses that reflect Indigenous knowledge that are based on the land. So literally that course, you go out a number of times on weekends throughout your semesters in the fall term and the winter term. You learn on the land and you figure out how to design curriculum for students on the land. Another on the land course that's coming up, we have an Anishinaabe on the land course. It's taking place in August up in Wakonakong First Nation. So you go up there, you spend time they have what's called a language ranch. So it's basically like a farm, and it's an immersion program. So it's for second and third year Indigenous studies students who have taken that first year introductory Anishinaabe course, so the Ojibwe course. So there's a number of different land-based learning opportunities. The IESS program, Indigenous Environmental Studies and Sciences, has a huge amount of land-based learning as well. Everything relating from traditional medicines and things like that through to food systems and stuff like that. So there are lots of on the land learning opportunities, and definitely any of our cultural events at First Peoples House, they're always posted on our social media accounts. So I will send a link to our Instagram. If you guys have Instagram, that's one of the best ways for us to stay in contact with you guys, and it's just kind of an easy way to see what's coming up at First Peoples House. But thank you for your questions, Andrew. I hope that answers those. So there's our FPHL Instagram there. Does anybody else have any questions? Again, you're welcome to pop them into the chat, or you're welcome to put up your hand and unmute yourself and chime in at any time. Emily.
Hi, I came in a little bit late. I wasn't sure if I misheard you. Did you say that we actually need to register as an Indigenous person with the First Peoples House of Learning?
So yeah, so we call it's Indigenous self-identification. So you don't have to be status or anything. We welcome both status and non-status Indigenous students. You don't have to have a Métis membership card either. But yeah, this is the process you go through. So if you click on this link that I just populated into the chat, it's a voluntary Indigenous self-identification survey. So you can click on that, fill it out. The information is confidential. Essentially what it does is it adds your Trent email to our mailing list at First Peoples House. And so you get direct communication from us as well. You can, when you connect with us, for our services. So if you're looking for, financial support, if you're looking for cultural support, you're looking for our mental health counseling. So all of that stuff is free of charge for Indigenous students. All of those, financial supports are Indigenous specific, so that you're marked for Indigenous people. So just make sure that your student file at Trent is notified it's marked off as Indigenous. So make sure you qualify for all of those supports too. So it's a pretty simple process. For those of you who are just applying to Trent as well, if you use our direct application form, which I can bring up here, there's a link to our direct application. There's actually an option in that direct application form, if you're in the process of applying, where you can tick off and just notify that you are Indigenous, again, First Nations, whether it's status or non-status, Métis, whether you have a membership card or not, or Inuit, again, whether you're enrolled or not. You can tick off those options. Does that answer your question there, Emily?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Very important question, by the way. I appreciate that. If there are any other questions, again, you're welcome to unmute or pop any questions you have into the chat. If there are any program specific questions too, I am the enrollment advisor, so I can probably help you out with any questions you have about the programs that you guys are going into. Also, if you have any questions about just student life in general, whether it's about the athletics center at Trent or anything else that you're curious about, feel free to ask any questions about that as well. Another thing I should mention too, if you are coming in, if you do have a family or whatever, we have a lot of Indigenous students who are young parents. So that's one of the supports we can offer at First People's House too. We can help you with connecting with childcare and things like that. Just make sure that I know it can be a tricky juggle sometimes being a single parent, or even if you're a parent with a partner, if both of you are going to school, if you're young parents, trying to figure out those supports too. So you're welcome to contact us at First People's House for any of those supports. And I'll put the general First People's House email into the chat right now. One of our Yep. So Andrew, I will answer that question in 2 seconds. So our one other thing I wanted to mention just about First People's House in general is that we will have our Welcome Back Tacos, which is our Welcome Tacos event for all incoming Indigenous students. So make sure if you do fill out have an opportunity, please fill out that Indigenous self-identification form, because that'll make sure that you're invited to Welcome Back Tacos. It's a day in September where we literally have a big Indian taco lunch. We usually have it out in one of the parking lots right next to the Indigenous traditional area. So you can come and tour the traditional area. You get your smudge kit, and we usually have a whole bunch of swags. We give away like all sorts of sweatshirts, things like that, scarves, pretty much anything with a Trent logo on it. We'll have it, and we'll give it to you guys. Sometimes we have really cool sunglasses. There's some cool stuff there too. So make sure that you guys are involved in the Welcome Back Tacos. So Andrew, you're asking if it's easy to switch between Indigenous Studies and IESS in the first year. There's a lot of course crossover. Yeah. So what you'll notice with a lot of those courses, they're actually what's called the cross-listed courses. So depending on what you register for them as, you can either register for them as an Indigenous Studies credit, an INDG credit, or an IESS credit, Indigenous Environmental Studies and Sciences credit. So there is a lot of options for crossover. It is easy to switch between them in the first year. Again, as you get into upper years, because you're reliant on prerequisites and stuff like that, it can become a little more challenging. For myself, when I did my undergraduate program, I majored in Indigenous Studies, and I took a lot of IESS courses on the side. That can also be useful if you're really wanting to focus a lot on Indigenous knowledge. What can happen is when you fill up all of your credits with a lot of Indigenous Studies credits, you can take more courses, of course, at any time, but you've fulfilled your degree obligation. So you're kind of not required to take them anymore, and you're required to take electives. And so what I did was, when I filled up a lot of my Indigenous Studies credits in my degree, I took a lot of Indigenous Environmental Studies credits to kind of supplement my degree, because I really wanted to specialize on language, and I wanted to specialize on land-based knowledge, because that's really important to me as far as what I was looking to explore with my degree. So there's lots of opportunity to do that. And in the first year, it is very easy to switch between those two courses, two program streams rather. So lots of opportunities there. And if you have any questions about that, you can email our Student Success Coordinator at FPHL Student Success, and I'll put my email in there too, which is fphenrollment@trentu.ca. And we can help you navigate that process too. If anybody's feeling shy, again, you're welcome, just as Andrew's done, to put your questions into the chat. Don't feel that you need to speak up, although you are more than welcome to speak up as well if you have any questions about anything Indigenous related at Trent University. Another important thing to explore is to really connect with us with regards to applying for different bursaries, scholarships, and awards. Often in the case of programs like Inspire, which is an Indigenous scholarship award program, there's not a lot of people who apply for it. And you'd be really surprised what you're eligible for money-wise. So there's grants for everything from purchasing computers to different housing supports. So if you don't want to live on campus, you want to go off of campus, but you're trying to figure out how to pay for that, again, we can connect you with funding for that. So really, I would encourage all of you to reach out to our FPHL Student Success Coordinator there. And again, our general FPHL website has links and contacts for everybody. So here's the general FPHL website in the chat. And yes, Wasanude Miigwech, for your question. Yes, so we do have these sessions all being recorded, and so there will be an opportunity to view them at a later date if you need to, and that information is just on the main part of our virtual open house website. So there's our general FPHL website link there, and I will send you a link to the contact page, which is right here. And please feel free to reach out anytime. And so we are coming up on 1:30 right now. So I'll give a last call out for questions if there are any other questions right now. And if not, I would like to say Chimigwech Gabazindoyik. So thank you all for listening in Nishnabemwin. And I look forward to meeting all of you on campus. Come by and say hi to us at our offices. We're on the 3rd floor of Zosky College, otherwise known as the NYing building, at the Peterborough campus of First People's House of Learning once again. And then also down in Durham, we have our staff rotate throughout the week. Durham's a little bit of a smaller building, so we do have a room there. There's an Indigenous student lounge there as well. Oh, that's actually one thing I should probably mention before I wrap up. We have a lot of Indigenous student spaces. So there's the gathering space. We have the Jake Thomas room, which is like a community kitchen area. We have an Indigenous student lounge as well. Free printing, free internet access, all of that stuff. Well, there's free internet access throughout campus. Yeah, we got lots of Indigenous rooms in the Battle Library. There's also an Indigenous specific study room, and we've got an Indigenous environmental studies and sciences room in the Battle Library too. There's a number of Indigenous spaces at Autonomy College, which relate to the School of Education for the Indigenous BEd program, including another TP and an additional firekeeping program over there. So there's lots of really wonderful things that you can connect with. And yeah, please feel free to reach out anytime. There's the FPHL contact website there. Yeah, and we're always available to answer questions at any time. We are student support services, so please ask us as much as you need. We will support you in any way we can. So thank you so much. Appreciate all of you attending today. And at this point, I will say Bama P or goodbye. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the time at Trent.